Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy-nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers-Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers-Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, it's Jennifer Rogers-Markwell, and you're joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. Today, we're joined by Hilary Billings. Hilary, thank you so much for making time today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Well, tell us all about you and why you do what you do.
I am the co-founder and CEO of Attentioneers. We help personal brands and entrepreneurs to grow their reach and revenue through short-form video strategy. And I got into this game because I, too, was struggling with short-form and how to get my message out there. I originally was an on-camera host. I worked as a journalist for USA Today, a producer for E! News, and then over COVID, obviously all of our income streams dried up. I was approached by an acquaintance of mine who ran the largest network of Facebook creators. They do collectively over 60 billion views a year. And he asked if I'd be interested in starting my own page. And I thought, yeah, sure, this is easy. I have all this background in making content. I'm a former international travel blogger. I know what gets people interested. Let's just make that into a video content space and use that formula and that format. And my co-founder was a Billboard charting music artist and a professional musician. So we thought that this was going to be super easy to take what we did and make 3-minute videos. And it turns out we were really wrong. And we spent 9 months banging our heads against the wall, trying to make content work, copying what we saw other viral creators doing, none of it being successful. And it was so demoralizing and disheartening. And we were losing money doing it that we finally had to have this come to Jesus of, we either need to figure this out or we have to move on. And we started asking a very specific question. What if everything that we thought was unintentional in these videos, that we thought just people made look really easy, that they accidentally fell into this viral content? What if everything was intentional? What if they had purposefully made and engineered each piece of this video? So we sat and watched thousands of viral videos over a weekend. Do not recommend you do this for your mental health. But we started to map out in an Excel spreadsheet what's happening at second 1, what's happening at second 3, what's happening at second 5, what are they wearing, what are they saying, what platform is it on, how long is the video, is there music, is there trending sound? And we took all this data, and it was a little bit like John Nash in A Beautiful Mind. These formulas and patterns just started emerging. And so we said, okay, what's interesting about this is that this has nothing to do with the platform. It has nothing to do with trending audio. It has nothing to do with even the genre of content. But there were specific things that were happening that were keeping people's attention that allowed us to see why these videos were successful. So we took our hypotheses, we took these findings, and we applied it to our next video. That next video did 5 million views.
Wow.
The video after that did 10 million views. And it's not to say that everything that we touched turned to gold, but 1 in every 4 of our videos did over 1 million views. 1 in every 10 did over 10 million views. And what we found was that if we engineered content in a certain way, we could get people to watch it. We could give that piece of content its best shot at getting the right eyeballs on it and getting help from the algorithm. So we worked as content creators for a number of years. We went from 0 views in the first 9 months to 1 billion organic views in the next 12 months. And we just saw a gap in the market, that there's these personal brands, these entrepreneurs, these heart-led entrepreneurs that want to get their message out in front of people, and they're struggling to do so. And short form video is the way to go right now. So we're seeing a lot of people just haphazardly attempt to get up there and just put something up because they feel like they need to be in the game, or copying what they see other people in their industry doing, and it's not working for them, and they're not getting the conversions, and their message isn't being heard, and they're getting lost in the noise of 20 million videos being posted every single day to the internet. And we just want to help. So that's what we do. That's how we got in the game. We too struggled with it, and we saw and found formulas, and now help others to get their message out there and get the attention they deserve.
That's super fascinating because, I mean, you said it beautifully, right? Like, are we just kind of throwing spaghetti at the refrigerator? Because I feel like, I mean, I'm guilty of that, right? Of course.
Yeah.
Like, putting posts up that you think people want to, watch, but do they? And how do you know if they do? And clearly there's definitely, a strategy that's better than just like randomly doing posts to do posts.
Yes, 100%. I'm a big believer in quality over quantity, and I'm a big believer in engineering and being intentional with everything in your life, but specifically with all of your strategy for social media. And I'd rather you do less and you'll get more results out of that than continuing to try to push a boulder up a hill with minimal results.
So I've been following you on social for a while, and you have just such a fascinating story. I mean, like you'd said, you've done all these different things. Would you be open to sharing kind of back in your pageant days of kind of where you kind of evolved and how you ended up where you're at now?
Everything's been a happy accident in my life. I like to say that anytime I was on a path and I thought I knew what I was doing, the universe would lovingly throw a wrecking ball on my way and make me change course and direction. And I'm in the middle of that again right now. It's just wild. So I thought that I was going to be a professor. I wanted to get my degree in clinical psychology. I was the #1 graduate from UNLV my year. And then I went on to be the proud recipient of 14 rejection letters from every graduate program that I applied to. I had one rejection letter that was addressed to somebody else, and they crossed out their name and then misspelled my name in handwriting and then mailed that to me. So that was a big fun piece to talk about not feeling worthy of even a reprint of a rejection letter. So I thought my life was over. So I did what any college student would do. I took off to Nicaragua and started a travel blog. And I thought at the time it would just be, here is the documentation of the downfall of Hilary. And now that she, at the ripe age of 20, my life is over. And what I found through that experience, I really loved traveling and I loved connecting with people. And I was a really good writer and I started to gain readership. And there was a lot of other people that were struggling with this idea of what we thought, if we did all these things, we thought there was a guaranteed promise at the end of it. And it turns out that that wasn't the case anymore. We weren't in a society where that was promised. So how do we create the lifestyles that we want to have if following that traditional path was no longer going to lead us to success or no longer a guarantee of success? And that led me to going and living with the firewalkers in Fiji. And I had just gotten back from staying with them for a month. And they claim to be the originators of the practice of walking on hot coals. They taught it to Tony Robbins, which he now incorporates into all of his events. And I ended up at a friend's 4th of July party where a firework malfunctioned at this party. The fuse blew up in the air. It traveled and circled around, hit my glasses and went down my shirt. And I ended up suffering 2nd and 3rd degree burns to my chest and my stomach. And suddenly my whole life changed. I had all these travel plans for the fall. Everything was put on hold. Doctors didn't know what my healing time would look like. They didn't know if I would look normal. I really struggled with ideas of being feminine and what it meant to be beautiful and would I ever look beautiful again to me. And so after about 6 months of living in that depth and despair and sitting in that pity party, I knew that I had to find a way to get over that and to move on with my life. And something that I talked a lot about in my travel blog was finding ways to make the uncomfortable comfortable, specifically through travel. But what would that look like at this juncture in my life? And nothing sounded more terrifying than being on stage in a bikini and having someone judge me based upon my appearance. So I entered a beauty pageant and then I accidentally won. So I never had any intentions. I had a ton of preconceived notions as to what it meant to be a beauty queen. And I'd been approached about doing it before, and I told people, no, I'm smart. I'm not going to be interested in ever doing something like that. And it was one of the best experiences of my life because I too got to change other people's opinions about what it meant to be a beauty queen. And also that you didn't have to be flawless to feel beautiful. And so I worked with the Burn Foundation and the Burn Institute and Camp Beyond the Scars. And it was a really wonderful opportunity to use my experience and my traumas and my story to help heal and inspire others. And I'm still involved many, many, many years later with all of those organizations. And it was a fabulous opportunity to get involved with my community and philanthropy throughout Las Vegas and Nevada. And I competed at nationals a year to the day I was burned. Shortly thereafter, I was awarded a very prestigious award by one of Vegas's weekly magazines. And then right after that, USA Today called. And they were interested in bringing me on as a reporter. And we wanted to do a trial. So we were in the middle of doing a 6-week trial for me as a journalist, which again, having had no formal journalism training, suddenly I'm doing that. But I had ancillary skill sets, right? I had experience writing blogs. I'd maybe done 2 articles for the Rebel Yell when I was at UNLV. So I knew the process. And they also wanted me because I had an existing audience on my blog, and USA Today was seeing the value of bringing in digital creators back before this was even popular a few years ago. So it was hard for me to sit in that worth, but I really wanted to make a good impression and just kind of going into the fire, as it were, and learning and building the parachute as we go. And I think I was 3 weeks into that trial when the president of USA Today called and asked to see if I'd be interested in hosting the red carpet for the upcoming iHeartRadio Music Awards. I said, yeah, sure, no problem. I didn't have any experience interviewing celebrities, but I did have a lot of experience when I was in speech and debate, cross-examining my opponent and winning that when I was in high school. I was such a nerd. I loved doing that. And I knew I could ask good questions, and I had my degree in psychology. So I freaked out about not having the experience, but I showed up for it wearing the sash and crown. Let's leverage, let's get the attention, let's build some rapport through and credibility through the sash and crown. And the first interview out the gate was with Ryan Seacrest. So no pressure whatsoever. But man, what an amazing experience and life lesson in that you're not going to remember what people say to you, but you'll remember how they make you feel. And he is a master at making people feel ease and comfort and just overall a sense of well-being in his presence and that he cares. And so I carried that with me with every interview that I did henceforth. And it was a really wonderful and illustrious career of interviewing and dancing with Mark Cuban. And I got to interview Ringo Starr a couple of times and Dolly Parton and just really get to see what an incredible opportunity can come from saying yes, even if you don't have direct experience doing that thing, but that you have skills elsewhere that you can leverage to move forward. And I think that that's what my life has looked like from there, going into sales and brand strategy and building my own business and keynoting to now being the CEO and co-founder of Attentioneers.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. That's fascinating. And again, following your journey online has just been, it's been awesome. It's been awesome watching everything. So
I know I'm such a weird animal, and I don't know. I used to joke that I don't know how many beauty queens are also USA Today journalists and also lion tamers and former living with the firewalker travel bloggers. It's definitely been a unique ride, and I'm grateful for that.
So one other thing we talk about on this podcast, obviously, is finances. So
Yes.
what's a money memory that you experienced as a younger person, as a child rather, that you think, helped mold your relationship to money as an adult?
I started a pet sitting business when I was in middle school. I think I was 10 or 11 at the time. And I just desperately wanted, I think I'd read a book, a Babysitter's Club book about it and how they had started a pet sitting business. And I thought this was the most amazing thing. I could make money and I loved pets and what an incredible opportunity. And we just got clip art on our computer. So let me make some flyers, and my parents chaperoned as I went to every single house around the neighborhood and passed out these flyers. And I got my first client, and I think I was making $20 a weekend. My parents would drive me over to their house to feed the dog and feed the cat when they were out of town in St. George. And it was amazing. And then that business started to grow in relationships and referrals. And then by the time I was in high school, I was full-time house sitting at people's homes. I rode hunter jumper. And so I worked with a lot of people and rode their horses who maybe had multiple properties or would go in summer in certain places. And by that point, I was living in people's houses 6 months out of the year in high school and college and spending weekends and long-term summer vacations. And I think what I learned the most through that process is that people really value trust. And it's very difficult to find somebody that can show up reliably and that knows that they care about your animals or your life as much as they do. And that was a big life lesson for me, is especially in business. If you can show somebody that you care about them and their well-being and that you want, even if you don't fully understand, but you want to understand what they value and help them get there, that trust goes a long way. And I had many of those clients for 15 years until I moved to Nashville. And then I turned my business over to my dad, actually, and he still has many of those clients today and loves to do it. So I think what I learned the most through that experience is if you're able to leverage a skill set and find a way to bring making money into a way of building a relationship with somebody, there is such a beauty to be had there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I feel like your story has been finding the silver linings through everything too, which is so encouraging. So that kind of leads us to financial infidelities. What's a financial infidelity that you either experienced or witnessed that you think others could learn from?
I think that there's two that come to mind. The first one is that if I am spending money on a joy, I grew up in a very feast or famine household. And so anytime that we were doing sports, and I loved horses and I loved riding horses. So there was a lot of financial investment and a lot of money that goes into riding horses. And that came sometimes at a major cost for the family. And so I think I learned to associate early on that my joy might also be a burden. And it took me a long time to write that as an adult of if I love something, allow myself to fully enjoy the investment, because I believe it's not necessarily about what you do, it's the place that you do it from. So if I'm trying to give myself a spa day or a pedicure, but I'm feeling guilty about it because should I really be spending this money on this? And I don't know. And then I'm not enjoying it anyway. And so what's the point? So really having to learn to release the guilt around spending money on myself, and also just learning to fully be present and enjoy and allow myself to have that joy, because the energetics of that is going to bring me more money than either constricting and not doing the thing because I feel like I shouldn't, or doing the thing and then feeling bad about it the whole time. Those energetics are only going to lead to more scarcity. So if I'm able to say, I'm going to choose to do this and I'm going to choose to really love it, that's going to allow more abundance to come into my life and bring that money back around. And so with that, I think what I've also learned is to look at some of these bigger purchases or things in my life that maybe I've always associated as being something that I shouldn't have, like nicer clothes. Think about everything in my life as an investment, from the clothes that I wear to the internet that I'm buying to the food that I'm buying, because the food that I'm buying is an investment in my health. And so, and even making that switch of I'm investing by spending this money on this food, I make better and different choices, because I'm going to maybe not invest in a milkshake, but I'll invest in a nice salmon dinner for myself, because that's going to provide different types of vitamins and minerals and fortify my body in a certain way so I can show up better. And I'm going to invest in internet, and I'm going to invest in my power bill because I need those things in order to run a business. And I'm going to invest in heat, and I'm going to invest in my electricity bill. And even though I might not like how high it gets in the summer because I live in Las Vegas and air conditioning gets to be crazy, it's going to keep my body regulated and make me feel good and allow me to live comfortably in my life so I can show up and perform better. So by turning the perspective from it's a budget or it's a cost to it's an investment, it allowed me to look at a lot of the things that we have to spend on a day-to-day basis as a way of really empowering myself versus being something that's disempowering me or taking away from my life.
That's a great way to look at it. I mean, truly investing in yourself. So my childhood, I grew up with my grandparents and they were depression kids. So their thing was like canned food everywhere to make sure that there was food on the table. So that was kind of the hang up, and that was my money memory that kind of trickles in. But same thing with food, right? Food and experiences. Like I feel like I can justify that, right? Because that is empowering me to still be the best version of me, right? As I move forward. So it's one of those mindsets for me, changing the narrative ever so slightly, just knowing for them it was food. For me, it's food. It's just like maybe not canned beans or canned corn. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for them, it was like bloated canned corn or bloated canned beans. So none of that. But moving forward and really taking care of myself mentally, physically, you know, and loving yourself and giving yourself the, you know, it's okay. It's okay to love yourself, and it's okay to, you know, really take care of you.
Yeah. And sometimes loving yourself means spending the money, and sometimes loving yourself means not spending the money. And totally learning to discern what is the right decision in the moment versus sticking to a rule that it has to be this way because it was this way in the past, or you feel like if you don't do this, you're a bad person or you're irresponsible. And I think it all comes down to awareness. As long as, again, we're being intentional about our decisions and we know where they're coming from and we're able to craft them and be experimental with them, this looks a lot better and different than if we were just a hard and fast rule of this is what it must be all the time.
Yeah, 100% on that. That's great. So as we, you know, start to wrap the conversation, one thing I like to ask, what are tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your own household?
I think it comes down to what is the energetics behind the spend. I spend a lot of time thinking about it's not what you do, it's how you do it, it's the place that you're doing it from. I could tell you to have a great day and if I say that in a, hey, Jennifer, have a great day, and I mean that I want you to enjoy yourself, that's a different type of energetic than, well, have a great day, Jennifer, which might be kind of catty, and clearly I mean something else behind it. And I don't really want you to have a great day. And that feels different. And that puts a different vibe out to the world, which is then going to determine what I attract and also what I'm looking for in the world. So I'm a big proponent of thinking about what is behind this intention, what is behind the action. And once I can land on the right intention, or an intention that feels aligned with me, then everything flows a lot easier. And how I'm spending money and where I'm spending money, and I might be making a purchase decision that feels really uncomfortable because of the lifestyle that I had growing up. And it feels like something that I wouldn't want to do because it feels unsafe, or it might bring about uncertainty, or even investing in my business. But really looking at what's the place that I'm doing this from, and what's the intention that I want to set behind this purchase, or behind this investment, or behind budgeting in this way. And that really helps to keep me aligned with my values.
I love that. Thank you so much for making time and sharing today.
Anytime. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And those of you watching or listening, hopefully you'll join us on the next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.